What's poppin', YouTube family? Joe Rogan and Wes Huff finally sat down, y'all. And it was like 3 hours long, y'all. So I'm gonna have to break it down into clips. Here on the first clip, we're gonna see Joe Rogan's thoughts of the Billy Carson debate. Let's hop right into it, y'all.
Wes, very nice to meet you.
Joe, pleasure.
So I, like many people, was introduced to you because of the debate that you had with Billy Carson.
Quote unquote.
You know, it's one of those things where it's very unfortunate when people get caught with their pants down. And I'm not an expert in many things, but the things that I am an expert on, you could wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and ask me about those things. And I go, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
I know.
That's very interesting because there's a lot of people that they sound good. They think they know what they're talking about and they can confuse a lot of people. But when somebody comes in and they actually know what they're talking about, it shows, and it shows really quick. Amen.
Give you an expert version of reality. It seems like he does not have that. And he is a wonderful talker, and it's a lot of fun. I like watching his videos. I love all that ancient history stuff, and even the most ridiculous tinfoil hat aspects of ancient. It's fun.
It's entertainment.
But I know that there's a different. Like Andrew Schultz and I had a discussion about this. Like he said when he had Billy on the podcast, he said, we're not going to fucking research anything. We're not going to search anything. We're not going to do anything. We'll just let him talk because it's fun.
Yeah.
Andrew's awesome. But when he was on with you, it was quite apparent that you are an actual expert in the Bible and in many religious texts, and that he didn't necessarily have the facts straight. So what was the fallout of all of that?
Well, it's interesting you say the expert thing, because I literally was asked to do it 24 hours beforehand. So I had like the least amount of preparation going into it.
Y'all, this is definitely a godsend too, because I see God has been slowly working on Joe Rogan's heart, y'all. We need to keep Joe Rogan in prayer. It was so cool to see Wes Huff come on the show because he has a lot of knowledge about the Bible.
And I was okay with that because I'd listened to Billy Carson. Well, and I listened to the stuff he'd said. So I knew enough about anybody who's tried to sue internationally knows that.
Good luck.
Yeah, right. Yeah. As far as I understand it, he would have had to file a claim in a Canadian court that would have been reviewed to have legal precedence. That he'd have to prove that he could win.
What was his argument?
Apart from the fact that he was embarrassed that he lost?
Well, yeah, that's...
Need to remove. And I was given 24 hours notice to do this.
But if you're a public figure, he's
crazy.
Clearly a public figure. Is that even... Can you actually say... No,
you can't do it.
So what was the... Does he have a lawyer that wrote this cease and desist? Is he a lawyer?
No. So he actually... It's interesting because Mark Menard, who was the guy who hosted this interaction, he sent Mark a handwritten one. And then he eventually gave Mark an official one from his lawyer. So I actually was sent one by his lawyer, which I, screenshotted, posted publicly online and said, I'm going to ignore this. And then, but he'd sent Mark, who was the podcast host, as far as I'm aware, numerous cease and desists, and Anton, who was the media manager. He'd sent a number of cease and desists. It is unfortunate.
When you get caught with your pants down, you're supposed to say, I got caught with my pants down.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do. It's the only, especially if you're public, it's very clear that you're incorrect.
Well, the irony of this situation is if he just kind of left it, it probably wouldn't have made anywhere close to the splash that it's made. And we told him that. We said, hey, Barbra Streisand effect is going to...
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. If he would have just kept low-key and not said nothing, he'd have been better off for real.
To happen.
Yeah.
You're a big enough personality that if I make a video and say, hey, I had this conversation, didn't go well for Billy, and Billy doesn't want it released, that's going to start to gain traction sooner or later.
Yeah. It's, the problem is to really delve into these subjects. It takes a tremendous amount of research, years and years and years of research. You really have to know what you're talking about. Most of us don't.
Well, and especially with languages.
Yes.
Like, we didn't get into it. I hoped to have, in our initial conversation, kind of pressed him a little bit more on the more overt things he'd said about like Greek and Hebrew and Sumerian, because I've studied a number of ancient languages. And when you study the languages, you realize the complexities of these things. And so when someone hasn't and they're making statements that are obviously indicative of someone who hasn't studied them, it's super apparent.
Right.
And so I think it's one thing to be making claims about, say, like Christian history or the Bible, but when you start to get into like linguistics and philology, it gets messy. And if you don't know what you're talking about, it gets really apparent really fast.
So the gentleman.
And this is not only good for Christianity, but it's also good for the people that are subscribed to him, because maybe it could have been a door to Wes Huff's channel and also to come to Joe Rogan and learn more about the Bible. So that debate was a big opportunity for God to get the glory. Amen.
Who brought the two of you together, what was his goal? Like, what was he trying to do, and how did he approach you?
Yeah, so he's friends, or I should say was friends. He was friends with Billy. They live in the same neighborhood.
Oh, boy.
So it's actually become really, it's become pretty rough for him. So he released a video yesterday, which I think people should go and check out, where he kind of gives his perspective. He's been friends with Billy for years. He was at Billy's wedding. Oof. Billy had 15 people at his wedding.
Oof.
Mark was one of them. Ooh. And they live in this community in Florida. Their sons are friends. Their wives would hang out.
Oof.
And Mark told me, he's like, I've been hearing Billy say, you know, he wants to debate. Nobody will debate him for years. And so as far as I think Mark was concerned, he was giving Billy the opportunity that Billy had told a lot of people he wanted.
Right.
And so he, you know, this was set up in that Mark and Billy have been talking. They've been on each other's podcasts in the past, and they've been friends, but more like business colleagues. Like Mark has come out and said, I hadn't really gone into the stuff he'd said about Christianity or ancient religions or whatever that much. Mark is he's a Christian. He has like a public profession of faith, and him and Billy had talked about the fact that they wanted to talk about like faith stuff and some of their differences, and that that Mark was kind of prepping for this, and his media manager Anton had sent him some of my stuff and said like, Wes has done some stuff on some things that Billy has talked about, and you know, maybe you should look up some of this stuff, you know, read into it. And Mark, very last minute, was like, well, I feel inadequate. Do you think I could just ask Wes? And so he DM'd me on Instagram and just kind of laid this out like, hey, I'm going to have Billy in my studio in 24 hours. I can tell him you're coming, I can tell him who you are. I can like give him your background, but would you be willing to come? And so that's what I did. And so that's how it got set up.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but was Billy aware that this was going to be a debate, or did he think it was going to be just a discussion? Like, what did he think it was going to be?
No, he'd been given all of the prerequisites. Like, he knew we're going to go over some of his stuff that he'd said about Christianity, that I was going to come in, who I was, what my name was, some of my background, and that part of the conversation was going to be me kind of asking him some clarifying questions and rebutting some of the things that he said. So you didn't watch the 3-hour live stream that he did you?
I watched chunks of it.
Okay.
I watched a little bit. I'm like, oof. And then I shut it off. Then I watched a little bit more. Oof.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Billy there says he had no idea going in. And I mean, as Mark said in his video that he released yesterday, I mean, that's patently false. He knew what it was going to be, who was going to be involved, and even some of the things that we would be talking about.
So it's very clear, y'all. Billy Carson did not know what he was talking about when Wes Huff pressed him about these things about Christianity and about what Billy Carson so-called believed. His lies were exposed. If you like this type of content, hit the like button. If you have any comments about this video, type them in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe. Join this YouTube family, y'all. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss a video, and have a blessed and amazing day. Shalom, shalom.